you no normal enemies?
It's been a while since Final Fantasy 16 was all the rage, and I've been wanting to do a review for a while now, but I needed time to think about it and, well, put my thoughts into words, and so here we are. I'm not even much of a Final Fantasy fan, with 7 Remake being the first game I played in the series, with 16 being my second. Before the game came out, I was all for it. It was one of my most anticipated games back when the PS5 was showcased. And I was following it off and on for years. I was totally into the idea that the game was going to be an action hack and slash and not so much of an RPG. And with a story that was supposedly supposed to be darker and more mature than any other Final Fantasy game, I was so down. And from what I've heard, the director took inspiration from Game of Thrones seasons 1 to 4 and told the writers to watch the series also and base the script around it for a world they were trying to create. And hearing all this, I was so into it. It was the characters, the politics, the morally grey themes that Game of Thrones has. All of that sounded so cool to me. But the story has no morally grey themes. It's entirely black and white, which I'm down for, which is totally fine. But the game has no idea what it wants to say or what it wants to do. But what is Final Fantasy 16 story? Well, beware for spoilers, because I'm not holding back. Final Fantasy 16 is set in the world of Valisthea, where 6 nations hold power through magical crystals and dominance. The story follows Clive Rosfield, who was expected to be the chosen dominant of the Phoenix, but his younger brother Joshua was chosen instead. Clive then became the master of the sword and was named the first Shield of Rosaria, becoming a guardian to the Phoenix. But when his brother gets murdered and his nation falls around him, Clive is then tattooed as a branded. Clive's journey takes him to various regions in Valisthea, where he encounters a wide number of both friends and foes alike, as he sets out for revenge. The game is very much Game of Thrones inspired during the first act, and you can tell. You got Cersei, Jon Snow, Bran, Ned, and many others. But what the game doesn't have is good characters. The main 3 that you'll come to expect is Clive, who you already know, Cid, the Underground's leader, and the man who wants to set the world right, and finally Tifa, Jill. She's Clive's best friend and lover, and as the story plays out, the closer they become. For a world all about power, magic, corruption, and revenge, Final Fantasy 16 is very much Game of Thrones. And it's interesting with what they could have done with the Final Fantasy twist, but for some reason they barely delve into any of that and go with a theme that's so left field they had no idea to explain it, and that's slavery. For some reason the game has slavery, and as you can imagine, it doesn't handle it well. Being a slave means being branded, and being branded means being able to use magic without crystals. And for the first half of the game, you get to see how the world treats them, with Clive experiencing that firsthand. Like slavery, you get to see the harsh reality of what it means to be branded. And just like real life, they're viewed lesser than humans and treated like tools. The game handles that correctly. But the moment the game intervenes and points at the branded situation, it makes no sense, as there are hardly any politics around the issue. Certain characters want to change the system, but how can they change if there's no one to talk about it? Like, the game never once takes its time to really break down how the political system works. It feels superficial, like the writer wanted to create a world that's bleaker than it is, but without delving into why or how. Like, why a branded tattoo? And who created this system? And why did they create it in the first place? How was it accepted? And if it's possible to get rid of the tattoo, why hasn't it been more common? What happens if a non-bearer gets tattooed? Like, I'm actually genuinely serious. What happens? Not to change the subject, but on top of all of that, the game also has another plotline with a beginning intro showing off 2 nations fighting for land, and both of them have icons. And it's not just them, it's happening all over the world with different nations and different icons. And these icons are the laws of these nations, which is really baffling when you think about it. Icons are royalty with a branded trade like slavery, but that kind of hypocrisy is never brought up. I understand the power difference, but then wouldn't the nations you go to all have different laws and ideals with the way that people treat their branded? Because surely, like the real world, it would. Like, they all are fighting for land, but why would they need to when none of their needs are different? The only reason to fight is for power, religion, or something one nation has the other doesn't. But they all have the same shit, so it makes no sense. Only one time in the whole game is that different, with another nation opposing all of the beliefs every other nation has. And it's great, but you destroy it and never go back there or learn anything about it. It's just gone. That's it. It's stupid. But then you question, when Clive kills a lord, wouldn't that land then be taken over by another nation? Or would it fall in its knees with no one to control it, with it collapsing on itself? And how much rule do these lords actually have? They have armies at disposal with followers who are loyal to them. So what makes these lords different in the eyes of the public compared to the branded? And these are just basic questions. The list goes on and on and on, and none of those questions are ever answered. Instead, it falls flat and ultimately gets forgotten halfway through. I know I'm thinking about this a lot, but when you're trying to be real, I expect real answers. Other than that, there's also the whole revenge plotline, and I will say spoiler, but you know what you're clicking onto now. So, by the 4th hour of the game, it's dropped with Joshua being alive, and it's not even done well. For the first 6 hours, Clive's brooding that Joshua's dead, but the game keeps cutting to a hooded man who has the exact same powers as him. It's obvious who it is, and the game keeps teasing you like, ooh, who could it be? Ooh. I kept getting annoyed at that. Like, it's obvious, come on. And when he is shown off, the Joshua plotline makes no sense. He comes off as a piece of shit. He knows Clive's alive as a branded when he died. Alright, he was in a cave. He got healed up by some dark magic people who was also under the Rosalia lion bullshit, whatever. But he never seeks him out. So Clive is left as a slave for 13 extra years. When he does see Clive again, it's by happen chance, but instead of reaching out to him, he watches him from afar and then saves him when he's in danger. But Clive's unconscious at that point, so he leaves with no words or reason. Thankfully, as Joshua is trying to save Clive, Clive manages to grab one of Joshua's phoenix feathers and keeps it with him for 5 years. And for those 5 years, Clive now knows Joshua is alive, dedicates his time searching for him, with Joshua not really giving a shit. And I don't want to hear anybody tell me he did, because when they do meet much later, they never acknowledge this moment. The game never goes into detail where Joshua was with this whole time, why he never saw Clive, or why he had to leave. After saving him, why couldn't he keep in touch? There was no Kingdom Hearts 2 reason, or Xenoblade reason. The game has this mystery aspect, but its mystery aspect ultimately adds to nothing, because the whole revenge plotline is dropped for Joshua being alive, and then where Joshua was is never questioned, and why he never saw Clive is forgotten about. It's stupid. Also, yes, I know that Joshua went off to fight Ultima, this bad guy, I'll get into it, but he couldn't talk to Clive about it? Why?
Look, at the end of the day, the plot is shit. The world building even shittier. It should never be questioned. And I tried to forgive it. I tried to enjoy the ride, but when the game is taking itself so seriously with it sniffing its own butt, it's hard not to question the blatant issues. But by 2/3 of the game, it's consistent. And I wish it was like that from the beginning, and I would rather the game be like Fast X than trying to be Game of Thrones meets 12 Years a Slave plus Xenoblade plus Kingdom Hearts. It's dumb, but at least it got there. And when it forgets all the politics, all that bullshit, and just wants to be an action game with cool shit happening, it's so sick. And that could have saved the whole game. But if you know me, if the game had good characters, I could forgive its terrible story. But it doesn't have that too.
If the characters were good, then I can excuse almost any bad story. But it fails that too. Clive MC is a special boy who can take powers from any dominant. He's moody and broody, but he's actually kinda great. I didn't like him as much as I do Cloud or Sid, but he grew on me. During the first act, you can tell he's had a life full of nothing but anguish and suffering, and as you go through the game, he changes as a character, and holds on to different ideals that help shape his character. But that shape stops midway, and he ultimately becomes stale. It's kinda baffling when this happens, as he was growing on me. And what stops his growth is he's too straight and narrow with no edge. If we look at Geralt from The Witcher, he talks back to people, he has sarcasm, while also staying gruff. Clive has none of that. Clive also reminds me of Jon Snow, but Jon had moments where he could relax and have fun, where he underwent hardship, so when the story hurt him, we as the audience feel for that. We feel for him, and we want him to succeed. With Clive, I feel none of that. He's not bad, but I just don't care. Anyway, then there's Jill. She's basically male Clive, but worse. She's supposed to be this tragic character, but the game never shows that, but keeps telling you how tragic she is. But she's really a bit useless, isn't it? She's supposed to be this badass warrior, and I keep seeing that online, but I have to ask, when does she become badass? What does she do to earn that? Because in my opinion, she's more of a dog than Torgal, and he can only bark. Jill, for all purposes, only exists to be Clive's lover. Remove her from the story and nothing changes. Jill is a dominant, but as far as she goes, she's a damsel in distress. During the beginning of the game, she's a slave to the Rockman Empire, and then later in the game, she's captured again, where she's about to be killed until Torgal saves her, and is captured once more later with Barney Boy. And through it all, she never shows how badass she is. And maybe that's because there's no party to control, but Sid's cool and slick, so why wasn't she? As far as personality goes, she's as boring as wet bread. I get why she's upset, I get her backstory, I know her struggles, but she's still trash because I don't care. She's also a terrible friend. In the beginning of the game, she makes a prayer for Clive, but not Joshua, even though all three of them grew up together. And then later, when she finds out Joshua died as an adult, she kind of just goes, "Oh no, that's terrible, Clive. Okay, moving on." I'm not even exaggerating. And when they do see Joshua again, Clive and Joshua have the best reunion, and then Jill's just kind of there. She kind of just exists, like in the void. She's just in the background. I don't know. Watch the clip.
Joshua! Clive! My brother. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. You're alive. We both are. Nothing else matters. I never dared hope that I would see this day.
I like it. I like this. And then there's Jill. It's so funny because look, she's just there.
Reunited at last.
Shut up, Jill. Get out of here.
Jill.
She kind of like cries and then just stops. Like straight up 2 seconds. Alright, I'm over it. Yeah, cool. What? Anyway, then there's Sid. I love him. I really do. He's laid back but serious when he needs to be. He's by far the best character in the whole game. I wish he was the main character. I wish he was around for longer. I would have hoped his charm would have rubbed off on Clive or Jill. And it never does. But as far as Sid goes, I think he's great. He and Clive should have saved the world together like Riku and Sora. And that's as far as the main cast go. I would talk about Joshua, but there's not enough to talk about. He's better than Jill, but at this point, who isn't? I wish he was more present in the story with Clive, as I never felt that brotherly bond outside the beginning and a reunion. But he's fine. There are also some other characters like Byron or Gav, and they're amazing. They're really good. I like them a lot. But finally, the last character to talk about is the ultimate bad guy, Ultima. A piece of shit villain that should have been redacted and revised for how utterly garbage he is. This talks so slow and has the most pointless dialogue I want to fall asleep to. Whenever he's on screen, he needs to stop talking.
The world was still young. We visited upon it a miracle. Magic.
Oh my god, I get it. This whole bullshit story is gonna be like oh, we came to this land and it was amazing, it was beautiful, everyone lived in harmony. But then all of a sudden, humans, they came into power and then they destroyed everything.
Yet the price for this boon would prove heavy.
I don't care.
A pole descended upon the land, painting the horizon black as night. Though we labored to forestall its spread, in this one endeavor, we stood powerless.
This isn't the world you want. This
And
is
so
world
we
we can have it now.
that
And
we
we
might
fight
endure.
for it.
Endure.
Just shh. This Ronald McDonald looking mother sucks. Yeah, sure, there's Barney boy, but he's just a puppet for Ultima. Barney is a good villain, but falls short because he's a bootlicker. He has no will of his own, and throughout the story, he's been both revered and despised by multiple characters. He's been spoken about, so he felt threatening. And when you do meet him, he comes off as that. You feel the presence. But very quickly he falls apart as soon as Ultima shows up. As soon as he starts talking about Ultima, he can go to the sidelines. Then there's Annabella, Clive and Joshua's mother. I loved her. Whenever she was on screen, I felt tension, drama, like something bad was about to happen but without knowing what she was up to. She felt like she was playing the long con, and as you go through the story, the more ruthless she gets, creating a harsher world for everyone but herself. And through it all, I loved her. She betrayed her country, killed her husband, destroyed the Rustfield Empire, became empress of another kingdom, gets Joshua killed, has another child with another king and treats his son like a second citizen, and makes her own son, Clive, a branded. What's not to hate? And through it all, I was down. I was ready to kill her. I was ready to hate her. But then the game goes, Ultima, bitch. Yeah, that's right. He was controlling her the entire time. And it's so stupid. She was a great character. Why ruin her? She doesn't even get redeemed or anything. But she never faces for her crimes. She kills herself. But for everything she's done, she gets the easy way out. And why? Oh, no. No! No! Why? No! And that's it. I can keep going. I can go on for longer with the story and how trash it is. And I can criticize it for longer. I can even... There's this whole other subplot with Joshua and how he's like talking to the king and how he knows Ultima is controlling someone there or some nonsense and he has a chance to speak to his mum, but he never does. It's really stupid. Regardless, Final Fantasy XVI story is pure shit. It has little redeeming factors, and really, the characters are crap, the story is crap, the lore is crap, the world is crap. It's just all crap. So ultimately, the story for me is getting a 2 out of 10. There are some redeeming factors I didn't get into. I feel they're better as gameplay segments, but they're essentially the icon parts. I'll talk about that later, but they're great. Oh, and I didn't even get to mention Hugo and Benedicta, whatever how you say her name. They are amazing villains also. Truly, I think they are. Benedicta's facial animations is great. And Hugo losing his mind over her death, ooh-wee, I really liked it. Otherwise, while the story sucks, the gameplay is stylish and sexy, and it's real easy to make anyone feel good. But is it as good as it looks? Well, that depends. The combat at its core is real simple. You have one attack button, a projectile button, and 3 Ekam buttons with 2 for special attacks and a 3rd to use the native power. Like, check this combo out. It looks sick, it feels sick, but then you realize all I'm pressing is square, and sometimes R2, and then the circle, and then back to square. It's real boring. I want to preference something though. I thought the combat was boring, and that's because it's not the kind of action game I expected. It's not bad, but when I'm expecting something different, or when I'm mainly pressing square and have nothing else to worry about in an action game, it's not interesting to me. It's meant to be engaging, but I prefer games like Bayonetta, Metal Gear Rising, Ninja Gaiden, those types. And throughout this whole game, you never unlock different combo routes, and never does the game incentivize you to change what you're doing. What you do in the beginning will work all the way till the end, and that's boring to me. I like change, and I want to dunk on my enemies with different combo routes, and when all I can change is my Echion ability, that's not really interesting to me. However, what I do like about the combat is how responsive it is. You press a button, it comes out no delay. I love that. I love how responsive it is. Dodging in this game is great. When you pull off a perfect dodge, it feels amazing, especially when you dodge as an enemy is attacking you. It feels great. As much as I don't like the combat, it has its good parts, and that's definitely one of them. There is a skill tree, but it is bare bones. Only until you obtain other dominance does it open up. While unlocking different combo routes isn't available, what is the ability to free flow Echions between battles, with each Echion offering different abilities and powers. These can change the combat a little, but switching between them while in combat and then using them to like do combo routes and enemies is great. However, you know, the combo routes just square and then R1. It's not that amazing. But each ability and skill can be unlocked and upgraded. And the great thing about the combat is that even though you might have the Phoenix Echion, you're able to put any other ability with it as long as it's mastered. And if you want to change your skills or try different abilities, you can easily respec your points at any time. The skill tree in Final Fantasy 16 is flexible and incredibly customizable. It's great. And going back to the combat, while it's not for me, another reason why I disliked it is because of how easy it is. I had to force myself to change the way I play because it got boring and only got interesting when I fought a boss, as only then does the game make use of its systems and mechanics. But when outside of that, the game boils down to mashing square, and yeah, sure, sometimes I can do combos, but why would I bother when the square hones onto enemies and just kills them? That's what I mean. Like, fighting enemies is real boring. Unless you're fighting, like, it just kills them. The combat is stylish, fluid, and sexy to look at, yes, but it's ultimately boring because of its difficulty. And that's what the New Game Plus benefits. This should have been the base difficulty from the beginning. It made fighting jobbers and bosses much better. I also disliked how boring the gameplay loop became. You run into a corridor, fight some trash mobs, fight a jobber, and rinse repeat. After a while, you know when these scenarios are gonna happen, and it got old fast. At least for me. I was so done after like a couple of hours. A couple of hours being 25. And what could have made combat even better, in my opinion, is having the game embrace more of its RPG roots and actually deepening those mechanics. While the game has some RPG elements like crafting, it's done extremely poorly. Like, the gear you obtain is trash. You can have 3 items: sword, belt, and ring. But they don't change anything outside of 10% more damage or the 2% buffs they give. Nothing else changes, and there's never a reason to ever worry about what you're wearing or what buffs to give you, because you will never feel the difference. And throughout the game, I was rolling in cash, having no idea what to spend my money on, because there was nothing to spend it on. If there was a special sword with special effects, I would have saved up and bought it, but the only thing to buy is music, and as much as I like it, the amount the game was asking for, it was too much. But the music in combat and outside of the combat is fantastic, I should point that out. But potions are pointless, gear is pointless, even accessories are pointless, and they have no modifiers to make the combat any interesting. Otherwise, outside of normal combat, there are Echion battles, and I love them. You can tell Platinum worked on this game, bringing the Kaiji battles onto a console that isn't a mobile chip. And holy shit, man, they did it again. It's great. The Kaiji fights are out of this world, and they blow me away every time I look at them. they're visually crazy, and it's not just spectacle, it's real gameplay, something most studios will shy away from, and they go hard. I love these sections, they are my favorite. The combat in Kaiju mode is simple but effective. The only real downside is how long these parts can get. While I enjoy them, it's a bit repetitive, but they're so far and few that it's hard not to like them. Outside of the combat, the world of Final Fantasy 16 is an open world like 15, but it does have big sections, and throughout it you'll find quests, but I would never recommend doing them as 90% of them are trash and have no good qualities with the most pointless dialogue and uninteresting storylines. And you hardly get any XP, so what's the point? They do let you explore a bit more of the world, but it's so shit, what's the point? Like, they're so bad. Clive is meant to be this special guy that everyone says he is. So why does he have to go and clean up some guy's house covered in shit? That's not his job. The only good quest comes from the ones that have plus signs, as they actually give you rewards and actually benefit you. But yeah, otherwise outside of quests, while the game is an open world, it does have big sections you're able to visit, but there's never a reason to. It's generic. The world seems vast, but as you explore, you start to see how small it actually is. You go through so many different sections of the game, and it's vastly different from area to area, but each area feels the same. There's nothing about it that makes you want to explore. You don't meet random NPCs, find secrets, caves, or anything. Also, during the game, you go through 2 different base camps, but they're just hub worlds with nothing to do. You can buy items, upgrade your gear, and that's it. You can't help the base in any way other than doing side quests, but don't do them unless you have a plus symbol, because they're shit. The game needed more things to do to break the monotonous loop of just fighting. There needed to be mini games like base managing, dressing up Torgal, comparing them to other pets in the game, fishing. Just anything would have been better than nothing, and they went with nothing. And through it all, throughout the whole game, the game has no idea where it wants to be. Does it want to be 60, or does it want to be 30, or does it want to be 24? Because it has no idea. This game has amazing graphics, it really does. It looks beautiful, but it's also completely shit. It is so utterly shit. I will never support a game like this where people go, ooh wee, look at the graphics, it looks amazing, doesn't it? And then you go, yeah, but it can't run at 60. Even on the PS5. We're not on a Switch. We're not on a Switch, are we? We're on a goddamn PS5. You should run at 60. This is not PS4 generation. It's not PS3 generation. What are we doing here? I'm sorry, but that pisses me off so much. There's so many are willing to forgive that. No, don't forgive that. Game should not be going down to 30. They should stay at 60 unless you're a Nintendo console, because it's so utterly shit with their chips. Ultimately, that's my final thoughts on Final Fantasy 16's gameplay. It's kinda crap. It's not the worst, but for me personally, I don't enjoy it. I have to give this game a 7 out of 10. Any game which cannot run a 60 all the way with minimal drops does not deserve a 10. In my opinion, I don't understand how this game got a 10. I do not understand it from the life of me. Also, this game needed to be like 40 hours shorter. It's 40 hours too long. I finished the game around 60 hours, I believe, and that's me doing some quests and then just skipping everything else. Just skipping almost everything besides the pluses. Otherwise, that is it for me. Do take care and see ya.
In the end, I wanted another action hack and slash game. It doesn't need to be numbered, but this style of gameplay is a work in progress, so I can imagine that in a future title it'll be better. I do miss a party like Final Fantasy VII Remake, and I do prefer that gameplay over this for an RPG, but as action games go, this is pretty solid, I would say, for anybody other than me. Like, there's nothing wrong with the actual combat in the game, but as for preferences, it's just not for me. Otherwise, it's a solid game. 7 out of 10. Anyway, if you like this content, video, stuff like what I'm doing, hopefully you are,
subscribe, like, and ring that bell. Hit that bell. Do people hit that bell still? I don't know. No, I realized I'm wearing this the wrong way. This Ronald McDonald looking mother sucks. He has no point for the story, and almost every bad thing that happens in the game can be placed on him. Like,